Hello and welcome to this edition of Northwest Newsweek. The district's medical officer of health feels like it's only a matter of time before a mandate comes down requiring citizens to wear masks when inside public spaces. Dr. Janet DeMille's comments came earlier this week, just one day after Mayor Bill Morrow asked his council to recommend making masks mandatory. Troy Charles spoke with DeMille Wednesday on the potential law and how it would be enforced.
I think if as a collective, the council were to mandate this, then I would support that as their decision for this area.
Mayor Bill Morrow announced Tuesday he will be looking for council endorsement at their July 20th meeting and asking the health unit to consider a mandatory mask order. Dr. DeMille says she has spoken to Morrow on the issue and had this to say regarding the potential new rules.
In terms of are we mandating masks, so there are provincial discussions happening and there are regional discussions happening about going that route, and of course we see that being increasingly the normal practice. So I am aware of what some of the conversations are about, and I believe that we will be seeing that even across the province in fairly short order.
As far as enforcement of that mandate, Dr. DeMille understands it's a very difficult task that would take a collective effort from all parties involved.
If there are broader orders, like if the province were to come down on something, they may have the enforcement built into that. But I think actually this is fundamentally a very difficult thing to actually enforce. And really what I want people to do in this area, and this is Thunder Bay and the district and beyond, I mean, our recommendations is that we are very much encouraging people to wear masks when they go into enclosed public spaces.
Some around the district have wondered whether a mask mandate could be placed specifically on the city of Thunder Bay and not all the smaller municipalities within the health unit's jurisdiction.
If I were to do something, I would consider the entire district. That's my area of responsibility, essentially, is the Thunder Bay district and the area that is the health unit. And there are 15 actually municipalities in that area. So when I would make a decision, it would likely be based on all of that. I wouldn't make one that's specific for Thunder Bay versus somewhere else.
Dr. DeMille admits that over time, the health unit has revamped its messaging in regards to mask wearing, and she hopes the public will continue doing their part to keep COVID out of northwestern Ontario. Troy Charles, TBT News.
The results of the latest COVID-19 business impact survey for the Thunder Bay district have been released. Although the numbers are still bleak, there are a few encouraging signs as well. The monthly surveys are organized by the Chamber of Commerce, the CEDC, the Workforce Planning Board, and the Northern Policy Institute. Michael Mohorovich reports.
At the beginning of May, over 35% of companies who responded to the April Business Impact Survey said they expected to lose $100,000 in revenues or more because of COVID-19. But that number shrunk to just over 20% in the May and early June survey.
The first month it was really significant how many people had lost a lot of money in revenues and sales within a very short period of time. We're still seeing that the losses are continuing because obviously sales aren't back up to what they were, right? But it's slowed down, so the pace of loss has slowed down.
The respondents this month are much more positive about the long-term perspectives of their companies. The data indicates that the number of companies that believe they will survive the economic setbacks caused by the pandemic has increased significantly.
We were looking at somewhere around 50% of the respondents the first time around were talking about closing or medium to high risk of closing. We're now down to around 35%. So that's a good news. The bad news is we're looking at now well over 50% of the respondents this month are suggesting that the economic losses are going to be at least $50,000 or more for their companies.
The Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy Program is expected to be extended by the federal government, a move that will continue to help the local economy, with 58% of businesses reporting that they've applied for the program. That's an increase of 20% from the April survey.
The relief went exactly where it was needed. We're seeing well in excess of, or almost close to 50% who are using the wage subsidy. They want to keep their employees on staff, but when you don't have people buying your product or coming to your services, it's tough to hang on to them, so that CEWS has definitely helped there.
58% of the respondents said they were taking advantage. They said without that, they really wouldn't be able to reopen because there just isn't enough revenue coming in. Sales are down, of course, because everything's a little slower, so that's really helping.
There's one other aspect of the survey that the Northern Policy Institute found somewhat discouraging. Only 23% of companies that replied in April also replied in May and June. 77% of the companies that replied to the May-June survey were new, making it difficult to completely understand the trends seen in the data. But they're hoping that those trends encourage companies across the board that replied to both surveys to also reply to the survey that they'll release in early August. Michael Mohorovich, TBT News.
Northwestern Ontario's 3 federal MPs are chiming in on the huge federal deficit announced earlier this week. The region's only Conservative member, Eric Malello, says the government doesn't have a real plan to recover from the crippling debt load, but the area's 2 Liberal MPs, Patty Hajdu and Marcus Pulowski, believe the $343 billion shortfall is manageable.
I've been working with Minister Marneau every step of the way. And in fact, early on when we said, look, people are going to have to stay home in order to flatten the curve, in order to not see the kinds of really dramatic scenes that we're seeing, for example, right now in the US or in Italy, in other countries, that we were going to have to support Canadians to get through this. And we also believe that the government of Canada is actually more equipped to take on debt than the average family in Canada.
So our debt to GDP ratio going into this was the best of the G7 countries. And going out of it, he's still predicting we compare pretty well with the other G7 countries. The other kind of saving grace is that interest rates are at historical lows. So the amount of interest payments on the debt are actually going to be, I think it's $4 billion less than was predicted.
I was hoping to see more of a plan. I think as it stands now, Canada is actually the only G7 country that doesn't have a comprehensive plan to restart our economy. So we would have liked to see some of policies like that be announced. Things like our proposed back to work bonus, which will help phase out the CERB and help get people back to work when it's safe for them to do so.
Meanwhile, the Canadian economy added 953,000 jobs in June as people returned to work during the COVID-19 pandemic. Statistics Canada reports the national unemployment rate fell from 13.7% in May to 12.3% in June. The StatsCan job numbers are compiled differently for cities and show Thunder Bay fared better than the country in a 3-month moving average. When including other factors like the number of people who actively sought out a new job, Thunder Bay's unemployment rate was 0.7% higher in June than May. For that same moving average, Canada's unemployment rate was 1.5% higher. North Superior Workforce Planning Board Director Madge Richardson couldn't offer explanations on how Thunder Bay fared better, but she said the job market is continuously changing because of the pandemic.
A lot of businesses were hit really hard, and so they're rethinking or recalibrating their operations. What are they required for staffing, that kind of thing. So some of them may be slower to start up than others. There's so many variables. I think it's difficult to make one statement of why it's happening. I think it's pretty complex.
Richardson notes how confusing these numbers can get and urges politicians that are basing their opinions on it to put a strong emphasis on what they're hearing from the workforce itself. Anishinaabe police are confirming the drowning death of a 5-year-old girl on the Edmonton First Nation last weekend. According to NAP's Deputy Chief Daryl Schneider, the girl was found in the water of the Edmund Lake last Friday afternoon. She was rushed to the Fort Hope nursing station with vital signs absent and was later pronounced dead. The regional coroner is now involved and a post-mortem is being conducted. Schneider says police continue to investigate. An industrial building south of Geraldton went up in flames early Monday morning. The fire broke out around 3 a.m. and destroyed a Courtesy Freight Systems transfer station at the entrance to the community. Fire crews responded to the alarm, but the fire was too advanced for the structure to be saved. At least one transport inside the building was destroyed, and witnesses reported hearing explosions, likely due to fuel tanks igniting. The Office of the Fire Marshal will not send an investigator to the scene as there's too much damage to pinpoint the origin of the fire. Greenstone Mayor Reynold Beaulieu hopes this doesn't prompt the company to leave the area, especially with a planned gold mine and other projects needing a large-scale shipping company.
It's very sad to see that this has happened because it's a great service in our area. The structure, again, is a structure that's been there for years and years. Where is it going? We don't know yet. The interim fire chief did say that this happened in the middle of the night, and where are we going with it? I really cannot tell you, but I think at this time it's a private matter, so it'll be resolved and things will move on.
An official at Courtesy Freight's head office in Thunder Bay was not available for comment. On Monday, the municipality of Greenstone passed its 2020 municipal budget, and despite added costs and delays due to COVID-19, it's a balanced budget. Ratepayers in the community will see some increases in what they'll have to pay. Adam Riley has details.
For the year 2020, the budget, the increase for taxes will run on average for an average home of about $45 for an average home for taxation, which represents 2.75%.
It's a budget Greenstone Mayor Renaud Beaulieu says he is proud to have seen passed in his community, especially during the upheaval caused by COVID-19, which has seen the municipality adapt to new procedures to protect both staff and residents. The $26 million budget, according to Beaulieu, has to cover not just one municipality, but 7 communities, each with their own infrastructure.
5 water treatment plants, 4 sewage treatment plants. We've got parks left and right. So all in all, that money spread out pretty thin. We need to replace equipment such as trucks, Zambonis. Believe it or not, we have Zambonis that are still in their 60s in our arenas.
An agreement signed several years ago by Greenstone will see water and sewer rates increase once again this year by 5% to fund improvements or repairs to the system. As in other communities, COVID-19 has caused many of the public facilities to shutter, but work continues, including repairs to the Geraldton Arena, which was damaged late last year during a fire. And despite the closures of public parks, equipment is still being replaced to the tune of $80,000. As well, the finishing touches are being put on the now rebuilt Public Works garage in Geraldton after it too suffered a fire but was deemed a total loss. When it comes to road infrastructure, Beaulieu says Greenstone has invested $1 million per year into its roads over the last 4 years, plus a 10% year-over-year increase. But the 2020 road work budget is getting a bigger boost this year.
What we did at council agreed that because the opportunities are here with contractors being around, doing paving in Nikina Highway, the main highway of 11, we've decided to add 2021 into our budget. And this way, we are going to be doing close to $4 million of road repairs in Greenstone.
Other big-ticket items include electrical work at the various arenas and a new garbage truck for the Geraldton ward with a price tag of $300,000. Adam Riley, TBT News.
When we come back, after years of clearing bureaucratic hurdles, one area First Nation finally has a home. It's not every day a new community comes into existence, but that's what happened this past week in the Greenstone area. Members of the Lake Nipigon First Nation gathered to watch the first hydro pole be installed on the land they hope will draw their membership together and create a home. Adam Riley reports.
Sitting back 25 years ago, this was our plan, and now it's actually happening.
This hydro pole represents the official start of the future for Anibigu, Zagagan, and Anishinabek, or the Lake Nipigon First Nation. It, along with several others, were anchored into the ground Monday at a special ceremony in the new community. Chief Teresa Nelson says the band has come a long way over the last 35 years.
We were all scattered. We were just, we knew who we were. On our status cards it said Lake Nipigon, various places. We knew we had a band. We knew we were recognized, but we were disorganized.
Currently, the band has an office in Beardmore, some 50 kilometers west of where the community will now be able to flourish. Nelson says once the power line is energized in the fall and the water treatment facility is built, work can begin on the 20 residential lots, which has garnered some attention from the band's 476 members.
They're chomping at the bit. They want to come back. And it's exciting to see, because at first everybody was like, nah, I don't want to go live there. I'm not going to live there. But now, we have jobs, We have a nice new reserve. Now we're going to have power. Now we're going to have water.
Nelson says AZA has also made an agreement with Greenstone Gold Mines, which is an open pit mine proposed for an area south of Geraldton, meaning there will also be jobs for the community. Councillor Cam Goodman praises the federal government in its assistance with its contribution of $3.2 million towards their new home. He says watching the pole get anchored into the ground flooded him with emotions and made him think of his father, who's one of AZA's elders.
I want to take this back to him and say this is a milestone for AZA. We do have hydro going into the community, and this is our first step, along with many hurdles, but we're getting there.
Thunder Bay Superior North MP Patty Haidu says she is happy to see communities reclaiming both their culture and their land so they are able to move ahead, and hopes to work more with AZA as they grow.
We understand that reconciliation is deeply entwined with land, with governance, with history, and with connection to community. And so that's the work that we've been doing.
Meanwhile, Greenstone Mayor Renal Beaulieu is happy to have new neighbors within the municipality, noting the communities of Ganugaming, Arrowland, Long Lake 58, and now AZA help make up the fabric of Greenstone. He believes there could be a small boom in the region as a result of the infrastructure that is planned.
This is a big project we're talking about, but definitely that's the key of being in Greenstone and having those facilities already here and available for people that are, going into these kind of projects.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
When we come back, a new public dock nears completion, and with it, the potential to create a new boating hotspot along Lake Superior. Silver Islet Harbor will soon return to its former glory. Construction is nearly complete on a new public dock built to last for decades. The multi-million-dollar project is roughly 12 years in the making and was supposed to be finished in June, but the pandemic caused a 7-week hiatus. As Corey Nordstrom reports, the harbor should be ready for watercraft before the boating season is over.
The last leg of work on a rejuvenated Silver Islet Harbor is currently underway, with estimates pointing its completion date to the end of this month. Scott Cheadle is president of both the local Campers Association and the newly formed Silver Islet Harbor Association, and has advocated for this project for about a dozen years.
Back in the day, this was a busy dock. Boats would come from Thunder Bay, would come from the North Shore heading south, from the South Shore across the border heading north.
The total construction project comes with a price tag estimated between $2 and $3 million, according to Cheadle, being done on behalf of the federal government's Department of Fisheries and Oceans. He credits MP Patty Hajdu with helping secure the funding from Ottawa.
The dock is going to play a critical piece of infrastructure for the tourism sector and for the community. You know, it's an important point where people can get resources into the community, and obviously where emergency services can come in more quickly as well.
The project includes the main dock, a new breakwall, a boat launch, and another dock attached to the breakwall. The dock also serves as the western entrance to the Lake Superior National Marine Conservation Area. Cheadle says the necessity for the project comes in a number of different sectors.
It's a harbor of refuge for anyone who's out on the lake and gets caught in inclement weather. We live at the end of a single road along a long, heavily forested peninsula, and God help us, there's ever a forest fire up there. This would be the only point at which they could evacuate.
Cheadle notes how beneficial having a breakwall nearly twice the size as the previous can be for the shoreline. In the dozen or so years that he's lived here, he's seen monumental storms with massive whitecaps. He says in the past couple of years to date, he's seen shoreline erosion of roughly 8 to 10 feet brought on by those massive storms.
The old breakwall, for instance, was an old timber crib that was filled with rock, and over time the rocks were simply rolled off by the ice. Pieces of the timber crib were coming apart. This is actually a berm built around the old crib breakwall.
Though the harbor's renewal is undertaken by the federal government, its completion will see the reins being handed to the Harbor Association. From there, they plan to build a marina within the confines of the breakwall, where it will be able to house 30 boats, with extra room for those seeking cover from Lake Superior's harsh waves. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
A group of Toronto High School graduates has embarked on a 60-day canoe trip across Ontario as a chance to give back to the community. Team Canoe for COVID is raising money for Food Banks Canada to help those affected by the pandemic. Avery McCrae has the story.
When plans of returning to camp in Algonquin as a counselor for summer were canceled due to COVID-19, Tim, Kaylin, George, Nolan, Will, and Jacob knew exactly what the next step was. Team Canoe for COVID departed Wabakimi Provincial Park on June 26th, and over the next 60 days will travel over 2,000 kilometers to the nation's capital while raising money to support those affected by the current pandemic. Family members of the team have arranged 4 food drop-offs for the young men throughout the trip, before reaching their final destination on August 24th. While the whole group has a great deal of experience with canoe trips, team member Tim Mulligan says the team is strong-willed and have become closer since the trip began.
Definitely there's a physical toll. Definitely hungry throughout the day, get dehydrated because you don't have an endless supply of food here. But mentally, all the boys are pretty strong-spirited, and we've all done this before, so we've been very strong throughout the whole thing.
Just through all this, I've gotten to know these guys so much better than I did last summer even, and we're such a great group. I think we really work together well, and I can't wait to see how it's going to be for the next 50 days.
The team is raising money for Food Banks Canada, with 50% of the funds raised to be allocated by the food banks to Indigenous communities. The team felt it was especially important to give back to the Indigenous communities affected by COVID as a thank you for letting them travel through their land. The team set a goal to raise $60,000 and have already raised more than 80% of the total goal in only the first 10 days of the trip. Kaylin Maruto Robinson thought the goal was large and cannot believe the support they've received.
We originally thought of the goal for $60,000. We thought it was super ambitious, but everything just kind of fit well. 6 guys on a 60-day canoe trip. How much should we raise? $60,000. Let's shoot for the moon. And it looks like we're going to land on the stars now and go even past that, which is crazy.
We've gotten to 80% of our goal already, and like, honestly, when I first came up with the idea of 60,000, I thought it was a ridiculous number, and we're close to it, and I don't know what's going to happen after this. Like, it's 10 days in.
The team has been filming a documentary during their travels that they plan to release on YouTube after their trip to share their adventure with those who supported the cause. Avery McCrae, TVT News.
That's all for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.